Good afternoon, everyone. This is the news with b.c.begley. I am your host, and it's Friday, October the 10th, 2025, and here are your top news stories for today. New York Attorney General Letitia James was indicted on mortgage fraud charges connected to a 2020 home purchase in Virginia. James, a Democrat who previously sued Trump over alleged financial fraud, called the indictment baseless and accused President Trump of weaponizing the justice system for political revenge. The case was presented to a grand jury by Lindsay Holligan, a White House aide with no prior federal prosecutorial experience, after the administration replaced the career prosecutor overseeing the investigation. The indictment alleges James misrepresented the use of a second home to secure favorable loan terms, while her lawyers vowed to fight the charges, the Associated Press has reported. The United States is sending about 200 troops to Israel to help monitor and support the ceasefire deal in Gaza, working alongside partner nations, NGOs, and private sector teams. The troops, part of U.S. Central Command, will establish a civil-military coordination center to facilitate humanitarian aid, logistics, and security support, though no Americans will enter Gaza. Forces from Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, and the UAE will join the effort, with U.S. troops coordinating Israeli defense forces. The deployment follows a Trump administration-backed ceasefire plan, including the phased release of Israeli hostages and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, the Associated Press has reported. U.S. officials, including Admiral Brad Cooper, have emphasized readiness to implement and oversee the agreement while coordinating with regional partners. A 7.4 magnitude offshore earthquake struck Friday morning in a province in the southern Philippines. The earthquake occurred at a shallow depth of about 10 kilometers due to movement along a fault. Authorities warned of potential damage and aftershocks in the affected area, ABC News has reported. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center said hazardous waves could occur within 300 kilometers of the epicenter, with some Philippine coasts seeing up to 3-meter waves above normal tides. Smaller tsunami waves were also possible in nearby Indonesia. Democrats and Republicans remain deadlocked over reopening the government, with the Senate rejecting competing bills for the seventh time on Thursday. The House-passed Republican bill failed 54 to 45, with 3 Democrats crossing the aisle, the same number as last week. The Senate will not reconvene until Tuesday, leaving the shutdown unresolved for the week, CBS News has reported. Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, insist on extending health care subsidies, while House Speaker Mike Johnson and President Donald Trump blame Democrats for the impasse and threaten program cuts. The stalemate continues amid concerns over delayed paychecks, including for the military. The Trump administration purchased Argentine pesos and finalized a $20 billion currency swap with Argentina's central bank to stabilize the country's struggling finances. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent emphasized swift U.S. action to support Argentina, whose peso recently fell sharply amid dwindling foreign reserves. The deal has drawn criticism from U.S. farmers and Democratic lawmakers, who argue it acts as a bailout while Americans face economic challenges, prompting the introduction of the No Argentina Bailout Act. The support benefits President Javier Milei, a Trump ally, ahead of Argentina's midterm elections on October the 26th, though economists warn it is only a temporary lifeline, Al Jazeera has reported. Critics, including Senator Elizabeth Warren, accused Trump of prioritizing foreign allies and wealthy associates over American interest. The IRS announced new federal income tax brackets and standard deductions for 2026, raising income thresholds across all brackets. Long-term capital gains brackets, estate and gift tax exemptions, and earned income tax credit eligibility were also increased. For 2026, the top tax rate of 37% applies to individuals earning over $640,600 and married couples earning over $768,700. The standard deduction will rise to $32,200 for married couples filing jointly and $16,100 for single filers, CNBC has reported. The announcement comes amid ongoing IRS furloughs, with nearly half of its workforce affected by the government shutdown. The Senate approved its annual defense policy bill, the National Defense Authorization Act, 70-20, funding the military at $924.7 billion for fiscal year 2026, amid the ongoing government shutdown. The passage allows House and Senate committees to begin the conference process to reconcile differences with the House version, which proposes $893 billion. The bill cleared over a dozen partisan and 50 minor amendments, including repeals of past Iraq and Gulf War military authorizations and new Pentagon authorities to counter drone threats. Several amendments failed, such as blocking funds for Trump's Qatari jet retrofit and restricting National Guard troop movements between states, The Hill has reported. Lawmakers resolved their disputes over scrutiny of U.S. investments in China and veteran funeral honors, clearing the way for the bill's advancement. Peru's Congress voted early Friday to impeach President Dina Boluarte over her government's failure to address a rising crime wave, with 124 lawmakers voting in favor and none against. The move followed a concert shooting in the capital and came after multiple previous attempts to remove her, which had failed. Boluarte, who became Peru's first female president in 2022 after her predecessor, Pedro Castillo, was impeached, faced widespread protest and criticism for scandals and her handling of crime. Jose Jerry, president of Congress, was sworn in as the interim president until elections next April, the Associated Press has reported. During her tenure, Peru saw record killings and a surge in extortion, and Boluarte partially blamed the crisis on illegal immigration, which did not stop lawmakers from ousting her. Russia's lower house of parliament approved withdrawing from the Plutonium Management and Disposition Agreement with the United States, which aimed to dispose of at least 34 tons of weapons-grade plutonium from Cold War stockpiles. The agreement, signed in 2000 and in force since 2011, sought to convert plutonium into safer forms like MOX fuel or irradiate it in reactors for electricity production. Russia cited U.S. sanctions, NATO expansion, and Washington's unilateral changes to plutonium disposal as reasons for its withdrawal. Moscow had already suspended the agreement in 2016 over similar concerns, claiming the United States failed to adhere to the pact, Reuters has reported. Together, Russia and the United States remain the world's largest nuclear powers, controlling about 8,000 warheads combined, far below Cold War-era peaks. The U.S. State Department fired a diplomat for concealing a romantic relationship with a Chinese woman alleged to have ties to the Chinese Communist Party. This marks the first known dismissal under a ban introduced late last year prohibiting U.S. personnel, contractors, and their families in China from engaging in such relationships. The decision followed a review by President Donald Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who emphasized a zero-tolerance policy for actions undermining national security. The diplomat and his girlfriend were featured in a secretly filmed video posted online by James O'Keefe, the Associated Press has reported. Chinese officials declined to comment on the case, calling it a domestic U.S. issue and warning against ideological smears. Alright, it's 9 past the hour. The weekend's almost here. Here's a look at the live weather radar for the U.S. And now here's the national weather forecast for today. There is a moderate risk of excessive rainfall over parts of the Great Basin and the Southwest on Friday due to moisture from Tropical Cyclone Priscilla, with flash flooding and possible debris flows in burned areas. On Saturday, a slight risk of heavy rain continues over the Southwest, the central southern Rockies, and parts of the mid-Atlantic coast, causing localized flooding in urban and low-lying areas. An upper-level low moving inland from the northwest coast will bring rain and thunderstorms to the Pacific Northwest and northern California, with heavy snow developing in the northern Rockies and the Intermountain region through Sunday. Meanwhile, a low along a stationary front over Florida will move northward, producing showers and heavy rain along the southeast and the mid-Atlantic coast. And finally, a dissipating front from the Great Lakes to the Central Plains will produce rain and thunderstorms spreading northeast by Sunday morning. South Korean authorities indicted Hak Ja-han, 82, leader of the Unification Church, over allegations she instructed church officials to bribe the wife of jailed former President Yoon Suk-yeol and a conservative lawmaker. Han and her former chief secretary face charges including bribery, embezzlement, violations of political funding laws, and instructing the destruction of evidence. Investigators claimed the church offered luxury goods and cash in 2022 to gain political favors and support Yoon's presidential campaign, the Associated Press has reported. The church condemned the indictment, calling Han a, quote, internationally respected religious leader, while Yoon faces multiple ongoing probes related to his brief martial law decree and other alleged misconduct. Han leads the Unification Church, founded by her late husband, which has millions of followers and extensive international business and religious operations. Kyiv was hit early Friday by a massive attack from Russia, targeting critical infrastructure and causing widespread power and water outages, fires in high-rise apartments, and 9 injuries. Ukrainian officials reported drone and missile strikes, while the Energy Ministry said experts were working to minimize damage and restore services. Russia also struck Zaporizhia, killing a 7-year-old and injuring others, while Ukraine retaliated with drone and missile strikes on Russian territory, affecting power stations and fuel supplies. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky described the attacks as an attempt to create chaos and psychological pressure, noting that previous strikes have already strained Ukraine's gas infrastructure, The Guardian has reported. Meanwhile, Russia accused Ukraine of rupturing a defunct pipeline near the front line, releasing toxic gas, though authorities said it posed no immediate danger to nearby residents. Morocco's youth-led Gen Z 212 movement returned to the streets on Thursday, demanding the dismissal of the prime minister and broader reforms to tackle corruption and improve public services. The protest, sparked by the deaths of 8 women in a public hospital, criticized government spending on infrastructure over health care and education. Demonstrators organized via social media, called on King Mohammed VI to intervene, release political detainees, and convene a national forum on corruption. Despite setbacks from looting and smaller turnout, the movement has drawn support across generations, highlighting high youth unemployment and widespread dissatisfaction, the AP has reported. Authorities have responded with arrests and clashes, while government officials emphasize dialogue and ongoing efforts to address gaps in services. A former Warsaw City Council employee has been charged with espionage for allegedly providing Russia with false identities for its spies. Authorities say he copied civil registry records from 2017 to 2022 while working in the archives of births, marriages, and deaths. The stolen information reportedly allowed Russian intelligence to create fake identity papers for agents abroad. The person was detained in March of 2022, and his arrest helped lead to the expulsion of Russian diplomats that same month, the Associated Press has reported. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine back in 2022, Polish authorities have accused dozens of individuals of espionage or sabotage on Moscow's behalf. President Vladimir Putin publicly admitted that Russian air defenses were responsible for downing an Azerbaijani jetliner in December of 2024, killing 38 people, after missiles targeting a Ukrainian drone exploded near the plane. Speaking with Azerbaijan's President Aliyev in Tajikistan, Putin cited a technical malfunction and pledged to punish those responsible and provide compensation. The crash had strained previously warm Moscow-Baku relations, which were further destabilized by prior ethnic tensions and arrests between the countries. Both leaders expressed a desire to restore and strengthen bilateral cooperation, emphasizing trade, energy, and diaspora ties, the AP reports. Putin also used his state visit to Tajikistan to reinforce Russia's strategic and military partnerships with Central Asian nations. Police in India arrested the owner of Shrisan Pharma after a cough syrup produced at his plant was linked to the deaths of at least 21 children under the age of 5. The syrup, sold at Caldriff, was found to be contaminated with a toxic industrial chemical. Authorities have banned the product in multiple states, while the World Health Organization has sought clarification on whether it was exported abroad. Contaminated Indian cough syrup has caused similar child deaths in other countries, prompting global scrutiny, CBS News has reported. The man faces charges of culpable homicide, not amounting to murder, and drug adulteration amid concerns over India's pharmaceutical safety standards. Israel approved a framework for the release of all hostages held in Gaza, both living and deceased, following a deal signed with Hamas in Egypt. The agreement, described as a, quote, first phase of ending the 2-year war in Gaza, aims to bring home dozens of remaining Israeli hostages. President Donald Trump indicated the hostages could be released as early as Monday or Tuesday under the deal. Israel is expected to begin withdrawing its forces to an agreed-upon line once the government formally approves the framework, CBS News has reported. Celebrations erupted in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square, with revelers waving U.S. and Israeli flags and praising Trump's role in brokering the agreement. Myanmar's military carried out a motorized paraglider strike on a village in the central region, killing at least 20 people, including children, and wounding over 50 during a Buddhist festival and a rally for political prisoners. The attack targeted civilians gathered at the village's primary school for an oil lamp ceremony marking the end of Buddhist Lent. Witnesses reported that bombs were dropped twice, with the first strike causing the most casualties, while the military has not acknowledged the attack. Amnesty International condemned the strike, calling for urgent protection for civilians amid the ongoing civil war that began after the army ceased power in February of 2021, NBC News has reported. The military increasingly uses low-tech paragliders for attacks, while resistance forces lack effective air defenses. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te pledged on Friday to accelerate the development of the T-Dome air defense system in response to threats from China. The system, inspired by Israel's Iron Dome, aims to provide high-level detection and effective interception of incoming attacks. Speaking at a National Day celebration, Lai also committed to increasing Taiwan's defense spending to more than 3% of GDP, with a goal of reaching 5% by 2030. The initiative reflects growing concern over Chinese military pressure on the island, DNYUZ has reported. Lai emphasized the government's commitment to strengthening national security and modernizing Taiwan's defense capabilities. Burkina Faso's military government arrested 8 staff members of the Dutch humanitarian group INSO, accusing them of spying and treason. The detainees, including French, Czech, Malian, and Burkina Faso nationals, were alleged to have collected sensitive security information after the organization was banned for 3 months. INSO, quote, categorically rejected the allegations, stating that its information gathering is solely for the safety of humanitarians. The arrests reflect Burkina Faso's shift away from Western allies, particularly France, and closer alignment with Russia, alongside similar military governments in Mali and Niger, Al Jazeera has reported. The region continues to face security challenges, with armed groups linked to al-Qaeda controlling territory and Human Rights Watch highlighting potential atrocities. Archaeologists in Poland have uncovered a 1,000-year-old cemetery containing human skeletons near the remains of a fortified medieval settlement. The graves date to the era of Poland's conversion from paganism to Christianity, and researchers describe the individuals as among the region's, quote, first Christians. Despite their faith transition, the deceased were buried with grave goods such as arrowheads, a battle axe, knives, rings, and beads, which are pagan customs. Researchers clarified that contrary to some media claims, the site is not a mass burial of Mieszko I's warriors, but a cemetery of single graves from his period, Live Science has reported. Today is October the 10th, 2025, and on this day in history, in the year 1845, the United States Naval Academy was established in Annapolis, Maryland, to train officers for the U.S. Navy. In the year 1911, the Wuchang Uprising began in China, leading to the fall of the Qing dynasty and the establishment of the Republic of China. And in the year 1964, the Tokyo Summer Olympics opened, marking the first time the Olympic Games were broadcast live via satellite. And October the 10th is the official National Angel Food Cake Day. Alright, it's 20 past the hour, and let's do a quick market update. Gold is up 0.8%. Oil is down 4.26%. Bitcoin is down 2.44%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 0.53%. The S&P 500 is down 0.97%, and the Nasdaq is down 1.47%. Hey, real quick, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on all the news stories that the channel has. And now let's get ready for the top U.S. national stories for today. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals has halted the scheduled execution of Robert Robertson, who was convicted in 2003 for the death of his 2-year-old daughter in a, quote, shaken baby syndrome case. The court granted a stay of execution pending review of new evidence and questions about the reliability of the medical science used to convict him. Robertson's lawyer argued that advancements in science have discredited, quote, shaken baby syndrome, and revealed due process violations during his trial. The case has gained national attention through NBC's Dateline podcast, The Last Appeal, and support from bipartisan Texas lawmakers advocating for a new trial, NBC News has reported. Former officials involved in the case, including the lead detective, now believe Robertson may be innocent, citing overlooked medical issues and his later autism diagnosis. The southwest U.S. is bracing for heavy rainfall and flash flooding as Tropical Storm Priscilla and another storm system move in over the weekend. The National Weather Service has issued flood watches across Arizona, Southern California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado, with a level 3 out of 4 flood risks for parts of Arizona, including Phoenix and Flagstaff. Forecasters warn that deep tropical moisture could bring 2 to 6 inches of rain, especially in vulnerable areas like burn scars and slot cannons. A second storm, Tropical Storm Raymond, is also expected to bring additional moisture to southeastern Arizona, Axios has reported. A new Quinnipiac University poll shows Andrew Cuomo gaining ground on front-runner Zohan Mamdani in the New York City mayoral race following Mayor Eric Adams' exit. Mamdani leads with 46% to Cuomo's 33%, while Republican Curtis Silwa holds 15%. Cuomo's support rose 10 points since the last poll, benefiting from Adams' withdrawal as both shared a base of moderate working-class voters. Despite the momentum, Cuomo remains unpopular, with 52% of voters viewing him unfavorably and his supporters showing less enthusiasm than Mamdani's, Politico has reported. Mamdani, a progressive state assembly member, continues to dominate with strong grassroots supports, focusing on affordability and public services as central campaign themes. Congressional Republicans have voted to overturn Biden-era land management plans in Alaska, Montana, and North Dakota, advancing President Donald Trump's push to expand energy development on public lands. The Senate approved the repeals 50 to 46, following earlier House votes, using the Congressional Review Act to target rules finalized at the end of Biden's term. President Trump is expected to sign the measures, which would revive projects like Alaska's 211-mile Ambler Road, opening access to copper, cobalt, and other minerals. The repeals also lift restrictions on coal mining in the Powder River Basin, though recent coal sales have seen little industry interest, the Associated Press has reported. Democrats and environmental groups condemned the move as a rollback of environmental protections, warning it prioritizes fossil fuels over renewable energy and endangers wildlife and native lands. The White House sharply criticized Senator Chuck Schumer after he told Punchbowl News that the ongoing government shutdown was making things, quote, better for Democrats. Officials called his remarks, quote, disgusting and revealing, accusing Schumer and his party of celebrating American suffering during the standoff. Schumer's team responded that his comments were taken out of context, arguing he meant Democrats' case to protect health care and end the shutdown was growing stronger and its impacts became clearer. President Trump and other Republicans blamed Schumer for the shutdown, claiming he is catering to progressives amid speculation about Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's possibility of challenging him in the year 2026, Fox News has reported. The White House also warned it may not guarantee back pay for furloughed federal workers, raising pressure on Congress to reach a deal. Nearly one-fourth of FBI agents nationwide are now focused on immigration enforcement, this according to data obtained by Senator Mark Warner. The Trump administration's intensified immigration crackdown has redirected FBI resources away from traditional priorities like counterterrorism and organized crime. In the 25 largest field offices, up to 45% of agents are reportedly spending at least half of their time assisting immigration and customs enforcement in locating and arresting undocumented immigrants. Warner's office criticized the move as a diversion from critical national security work, while Attorney General Pam Bondi defended it as necessary to remove violent offenders, Axios has reported. The shift reflects FBI Director Kash Patel's broader focus on immigration and violent crime. 4 people were found dead Wednesday in a San Francisco home in what police are calling a case of, quote, suspicious deaths. Officers discovered the bodies during a welfare check at a $1 million residence on Monterey Boulevard in an upscale neighborhood. The victims, believed to be family members, were pronounced dead at the scene, and investigators are exploring the possibility of a murder-suicide. Neighbors described the family as quiet and friendly, noting they had lived in the area for about a year, Fox News has reported. The San Francisco Police Department's Homicide Unit and the Medical Examiner's Office are investigating, with officials yet to release the victims' identities or the causes of death. Roy Lee Ward, 53, was executed by lethal injection early Friday at the Indiana State Prison for the 2001 rape and murder of 15-year-old Stacey Payne. The execution, Indiana's third since resuming capital punishment last year, was carried out at 12:33 a.m. local time after Ward exhausted all legal appeals and was denied clemency. Ward, who had recently been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, expressed remorse for the crime, this according to his attorney and his spiritual advisor. His case had wound through the courts for more than 2 decades, including an overturned conviction and a retrial, the AP has reported. The victim's family said they were relieved the sentence was finally carried out, remembering Payne as a bright, kind teenager whose loss left lasting pain. Tropical Storm Jerry moved through the Atlantic toward the Leeward Islands as tropical storms Priscilla and Raymond tracked along Mexico's Pacific coast, bringing risks of heavy rain and flooding. Raymond, located about 85 miles south-southeast of Mexico, had sustained winds of 45 miles per hour and was moving west-northwest at 15 miles per hour. Priscilla threatens flash flooding in the U.S. Southwest through the weekend, while subtropical storm Karen formed far from land in the North Atlantic with winds of 45 miles per hour. An unnamed storm off the U.S. Southeast, combined with unusually high king tides, may cause coastal flooding in areas like North Carolina's Outer Banks and Charleston, South Carolina, NBC News has reported. Meteorologists noted that the return of the Pacific cooling pattern La Nina could influence global weather, potentially worsening rainfall, drought, and hurricane activity. Libby Adame, 55, was convicted Thursday of second-degree murder and practicing medicine without certification in connection with the March 2024 death of a 59-year-old woman in Malibu. The woman died from a silicone embolism after injections to her buttocks, and Adame now faces 15 years to life when sentenced on November the 5th. Adame had previously been convicted in March of 2024, along with her daughter, Alicia Galaz, of involuntary manslaughter for the 2019 death of 26-year-old Carissa Rajpal from similar procedures. Prosecutors argued Adame ignored warnings after her prior conviction and continued performing illegal procedures, while her defense claimed she did not administer the injections that caused the woman's death, NBC News has reported. Adame, known as the, quote, butt lady, has remained in custody since her May 12th arrest, and her lawyer contended that she was only consulting for doctors legally performing ejections in Mexico. Okay, everyone, that is our show for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I am going to be working on the show a little bit this weekend. I'm trying to improve it. I'm always working on the show. One of the things I know I want to put on the show is a good news section. The news is always so gloomy and depressing sometimes. So I'm going to start digging up some good news stories. I'm going to put a whole section out there for that. I'm going to do some more business, space, archaeology, as much as I can find them. Sometimes they don't produce enough news stories on those topics. But I am going to be working on the show, working on some different segments, trying to improve the show. Always improving the show is my goal. So check back on Monday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time for another episode of The News with BC. And until then, have a great rest of your weekend.